Hey everyone, welcome back or welcome to my channel. My name is Savannah and we're back in Meadowside Park, which is one of our newer Planet Zoo sandbox mode projects in which we are creating essentially kind of a mini zoo. This is very heavily inspired by the Atascadero Zoo, Charles Paddock Zoo, that is in Atascadero, California. I've visited many times and we are on episode, this is like 3 now. The first episode we did the entrance, the second one we did the flamingos and the walkthrough aviary, and now we're moving on to the barn area. Absolutely not at all, because Planet Zoo's most recent pack was a Barnyard DLC. That was actually the main inspiration for starting this project, and it just took me a couple episodes to get there because I didn't want the barn animals to be kind of right at the front. I mean, they are at the front, but we had to put flamingos in the walkthrough aviary first. So, long story short, this is the part of the zoo that I've been wanting to get to since the Barnyard Animal Pack released, what, like a month ago or 2 months ago? I forget how long it's been out for, but in this episode, we are adding the chickens, the alpaca, the donkey, and the goats. So this barn is going to encompass all of those different animals in one. And as I've kind of mentioned in episodes previous to this one, we are not kind of putting a 100% stamp on this build. It's not going to be 100% done. I'm not 100% satisfied with it. However, because I am so incredibly indecisive, this took me about 5 hours worth of building. I went back and forth with colors. I went back and forth with design. This is just one that it just took me a long while. So you will see some cuts in this video. You will see some missing footage. I kind of cut out like placing down barriers, and the 2 or 3 times that I went through and recolored the entire barn, I cut that out. Now, if you do want to see the entire thing, every single part of the building process, that is all recorded and it will be released as a kind of like a slow build on our second channel, the Unwind channel. That's linked down below. That will have no commentary. It's just music. It's to put on while you are relaxing, going to sleep, doing chores, studying, whatever you need background music for. But it's also going to be, I think I'm going to do that one as double speed, so much slower than this one. So you'll be able to see exactly what I'm doing and when I'm doing it, and I won't cut out any of the portions that I cut out for today's video. So if you're interested, again, that link is down below. But back to this. So this is Meadowside Park, as I mentioned. We are doing this as kind of like a mini zoo. So I have yet to install the borders of the zoo because I'm kind of putting it off. I want to limit myself because I do want to actually complete a project, but I'm also a little afraid to limit myself because it's going to make things a little bit harder. But the idea I have taken from another YouTube creator and friend, Masked Bandit, where he did a Planet Coaster project and he confined himself, I think it was a 50 by 50 square, and he had to fill in the entire thing and not go outside those boundaries. So I haven't quite decided if I'm going to do the exact same 50 by 50 square or not, but that's kind of the idea behind this. Now, I mentioned that we are using heavy inspiration from the Charles Paddock Zoo. However, this is not going to be a one-to-one recreation. This episode is a perfect example of that because this doesn't exist in the Atascadero Zoo in Charles Paddock. This area, there is a bit of like a barn area. Every single time I've gone, though, I have not seen any animals in it, so it must either be like an older exhibit or I've just been really unlucky and they just haven't had animals out. I don't really know what the case is, but either way, it doesn't look anything like this. It's kind of just like a barn facade in the back with like an open pen in the front, and it's just all dirt. There's really not a whole lot to it. There's not a lot of detail to it, and like I said, I've never really seen any animals in there, so I'm not quite sure exactly what used to live there, if anything at all. I mean, I'm assuming something lived there at one point, but I'm just not sure what it is. So this is where I'm taking creative liberty, and I'm actually taking a reference picture of kind of a little structure that they have in like the off limits area. Again, I'm not quite sure if it's open just during certain parts of the year or if it used to be open, it's not anymore. There's nothing back there, but there's this yellow building with this dark brown trim that looks kind of like, again, it would house maybe like rabbits or chickens or something small like that. And I'm basically just taking like the color scheme, really, and it has kind of like a walkthrough part in the middle, which is where I got the idea to make the chickens on the right-hand side and the main barn on the left-hand side. So that's what we're working on here. This is the chicken coop. And yes, the chickens can go in and out of this, although they kind of choose not to. I do make all of the openings and all of the doorways able to fit the animal hitboxes. I will say, except for the alpaca. The poor alpaca is stuck outside. He can't go inside or outside, but there was no way for me to make his little door bigger, so we're just gonna have to pretend that he can go inside and outside. But anyway, the chickens can go inside and outside. I wanted to make sure that they can use this. So as you saw, I made a little coop. We've got some nest boxes, excuse me. We've got some little roosting perches so they can go in there and roost inside, putting the hay everywhere. I did forget to add eggs because part of me forgot that we actually have an egg piece in the game. So I do need to go back and do that. This building I do consider to be pretty much finished. The only thing that I do want to add is something on the outside. When I was looking at the chicken area at the very end, and you can tell me when we get there what you think of the final product, but when I was looking at the chicken coop area when it was all complete, it looked a little bit plain and it looked a little bit boring. And this is where I tend to struggle with maybe lower budget or smaller projects because they aren't going to have a lot of budget to make purely decorative installations in their exhibits or their habitats or their buildings. Like, they are just going to have plain walls. They are just going to have plain walkways with plants on the side. You know, there's not always going to be some big elaborate sign or decorative piece or anything like that. And whereas I look at those things in a real life park and I don't really think much of it because I'm focused so much on the animal and, you know, just the atmosphere and being there and all that kind of stuff. When I'm playing in Planet Zoo and I'm actually building something, those areas kind of stick out like a sore thumb. Like my eyes are drawn to them. It's blank. I need to add something. So I haven't quite decided what this building needs, and you can definitely let me know your comments and suggestions down in the comment section below. I would love to hear them, but maybe it is just like a small, simple sign, or maybe it is just some weathered decals, like where the wood would be kind of weathered from the rain and stuff like that. I'm not quite sure. I do add gutters to the building, which is, this is the first project that I think I've added gutters reliably to all my buildings. I am trying to think at least a little bit on the realistic side. But yeah, you can let me know what you think. Now, I will say, don't get too attached to this fencing because I originally started building this right when the Barnyard Animal Pack came out, the project. And when that pack released, they had this beautiful wooden fencing, but they were missing they had a beautiful wooden gate, but they were missing the fencing. And it was such a shame because the gate was so pretty, but it didn't have a fence to go along with it. And so I decided to use these pieces that you see now at first because they're recolorable and because I could match them with the dark trim of the building. However, in the middle of building this, Planet Zoo actually released those fence pieces and they're just gorgeous. So I do end up switching them out and using those. However, my only knock on them is that they are not recolorable, so they are a much lighter wood, which is why in a minute here you'll see me, I don't think I cut that part out. I wanted to definitely show you kind of my thought process with the coloring of the building, is I actually go through and I recolor this entire barn like a dark red. I mentioned in, I think, the last 2 episodes both, that I am trying to get out of my comfort zone just a little bit. I'm trying to use some color in this project, whereas I normally kind of wouldn't. So in the entrance building, we've got that bright teal mixed with like the kind of corally orange of the barn. And I'm really happy with how that came out. And so I want to keep using stuff like that. I want to keep using color like that, which is why I picked the reference picture that I did, because that structure was yellow and everybody thinks of a barn as being red, and I wanted to steer away from that. However, when I was switching to the lighter fencing of the new piece from the Barnyard pack, it really kind of clashed with the yellow on the barn. And so I played around with colors and I had it dark red for a while. And then I figured out that I could kind of cheat it just a little bit by kind of having a gradient between the fencing, the trim, and then the barn. So essentially what I did is I didn't match the trim of the building. And by the trim, I mean like the corners and all the stuff that you see trimming around the window. All of that is the Twilight wood pieces, which are my favorite wood beams in the game. Nothing better, but they are recolorable. And so I did choose to make those slightly darker than the Barnyard fence, and that way the contrast between the trim on the building and the yellow on the barn actually did look nice. It didn't blend in too much with itself, and so it kind of like bridged that gap between the fencing that I couldn't color and the trim on the building against the yellow of the actual barn. So that all is a long way of me telling you that this barn does end up being yellow in the final product, and I am happy with how it came out. I really, like I said, I just wanted to stay away from like a stereotypical red barn and use a color that I typically wouldn't have before. Plus, I think it looks very fun, and this section of the zoo, at least in Charles Paddock Zoo when I visit, even though there's not animals, from the looks of it, is it kind of looked like it was supposed to be like a child area, possible like petting zoo, something like that. And so I just thought the light and fun yellow looked very kind of kiddish, and kind of fit that style that I was going for. Now, I've been talking a lot over what we're doing in the actual video. We've gotten kind of some progress on a couple different things here. The first being, you can see me kind of put down some pathing. It was important for me in this build that it kind of function as best as we possibly could get it. Now, this will not work in franchise mode. It is not following any of the animals' needs whatsoever. It functions in the sense that the habitats each have a gate, and the keepers can get in and out of them to put animals in there, and that's pretty much it. So I mentioned that because my plans are very much to put this up on the workshop, but it will not be a habitat that you're going to put into a park and expect your animals to be happy. You're going to have to use it in Sandbox and make it so the animal needs and stuff are not all taken into consideration. I mentioned already that the animals can actually go in and out of the enclosures except for the alpaca, or inside and outside, I should say, except for the alpaca. And so we're just going for looks here. We really are. But I did want it to be, as I mentioned, as functional as possible. And if I were to open the zoo to guests, which, let's be honest, I'm probably never going to, but if I was going to open it for the guests, I did want them to be able to walk through this barn area. So you can see that I'm utilizing the best thing Planet Zoo ever added to the game, those null paths. And I will use some curbing to keep it so they don't actually clip into the exhibits themselves. But guests should be able to walk both through the interior of the main barn and through the two barns, this little area here. So the chicken coop on the right and the main barn on the left. So it was important to me that it be as functional as I possibly could make it while also still making it pretty. The second thing that I've done while we are in the first round of recoloring here, I didn't cut out all of it, so here's a little bit. This is me playing with some of the trim colors. I did some of the roofing. Now, the roof did take me quite a while. I did struggle a little bit because I really was trying to avoid making a fully custom roof. Fully custom roofs are not only at least a headache for me, but they are very heavy on the piece count, and I wanted to try to keep that in mind because I am already using a bunch of tiny pieces for like the chicken coop and stuff like that, and this project isn't even close to being done, so I do want to be conscious of that and not overuse pieces if I don't have to. But honestly, the main motivator was because I wanted it to be easy for me. I really didn't want the roof to be this super time-consuming part of the project. So while I was looking at roof pieces, I did definitely want the barn to have that kind of iconic, very recognizable, like two-sloped kind of roof. I don't know if there's a specific name for it or not. But when I was looking at the actual in-game pieces in Planet Zoo, you know, we have the steepest one, the next steepest one, and then a steeper one after that. You know, my brain is failing me right now. I don't know the word for less steep, so you'll have to excuse me as I try to explain this. But the least sloped one is the one that I used for the top of the roof. And then after that, I actually used the trim pieces because they have a very slightly steeper slant to them than the roof piece that they match. And so by using the trim pieces over and over and over again, I was able to get this really gradual slope between the top of the roof and the outsides of the roof. And one of the reasons why I wanted to do that is because using the other piece, the actual roof piece that's steeper than the top piece that I used, made the roof way too tall. And to me, it just, for the size of the barn, it wasn't going to look, you know, quote unquote, realistic enough. It wasn't going to give it the look that I really wanted it to have. And so I opted to use those trim pieces. So yes, there are a lot of them. It is definitely a higher piece count than if you were just doing a full roof with just roofing pieces, like the actual big 1 meter by 1 meter pieces. But it's far less than I would have made it with like actual individual planks or something like that. I did choose the roof specifically because it was recolorable and it kind of had that wood plank kind of feel to it. I really didn't want to go as rustic as to use like the corrugated metal, like something from the Australia pack. You know, I really didn't want it to look quite that rustic. Plus, I love those roof pieces to death, but they are not recolorable, and that's my biggest gripe with them, is that I didn't want that like really bright orange and like gray blue kind of contrasty colors that they have on them. Just really weren't going to match what I was going for this barn. Now, moving on to what we're doing here is, you can see I've actually taken the like sliding a barn door from our gift shop and modified it to be the door for the front of this barn here. Just because I wanted to give the impression that you could open and close this door. I do think it would be probably a functional door. Maybe they do close it at night. I know a lot of parks will do that, where they have, you know, doors into exhibits like this. So as they're closing, security will like clear out the building, close the doors, and then continue clearing the rest of the park. So I do see it as a functional door, but I did have to modify it just a little bit to fit onto the barn itself instead of onto the gift shop, because it is a much smaller door and it's only a one-sided door. And now working on some of the windows here for the main barn itself, I do go through and add just a few more windows in addition to the two that you're seeing here. One, because I really don't like the shadows in Planet Zoo, like the darkness on the inside of buildings, so I was trying to let some light in. It was more or less kind of unsuccessful just from the angle of lighting and the way that this map is set up. But I was trying to let some lighting in, that way the screenshots would look a little bit better, would look a little bit nicer inside. But I also was trying to think about airflow. If you've ever been around barn animals, you will be very familiar with how bad they smell, and so allowing some air to flow through the building might just make it a little bit nicer for our guests. I mean, it's obviously not going to help and get rid of everything, but just trying to mitigate that just a little bit. So you can see here I've added 2 more windows. I definitely didn't want them to be full open windows. You know, I don't really want people like reaching in towards the animals where they're not supposed to be. So I do use the chain link to kind of block those off, putting a couple shutters here, which are probably just decorative. They probably aren't open and closable windows, I would imagine. And then, to be honest, in an exhibit like this where you have people able to reach out to animals, there very likely would be either some educator or a keeper that would be paid and stationed out here to kind of stand and help guests or more or less protect the animals. So that's what I kind of envision, which is why, you know, these fences on the inside are very easy for somebody to kind of reach over and touch the animals, which all of these animals are meant to be able to do that or allow people to pet and hang out with them. But they still would probably need just a little bit of assistance because, you know, as much as we would like to think that all the guests would behave and be nice, that's just not the reality of the world. So we would probably have somebody sitting there with them. Now, moving on to one of my favorite parts, to be honest. I don't know what it is as of recently. I've just gotten kind of like a wild hair, and I've felt like building cool educational signs. So this was the very first one I did, and I am using a reference picture from some zoo. I'm not quite sure where it was, but it had this kind of shovel and then all the information coming off of it. And I thought that that would fit really well, obviously, because it's a barn and you use shovels in a barn. That's a really good explanation, right? And so that's where I wanted to use this as the kind of informational sign on the inside here. So no idea what it would say. Maybe it has some information about agriculture and, you know, how to properly farm or take care of your animals or whatever information you think it might have. But I'm just really happy with how it came out. I have not dared really to work with the font pieces up until now, to be honest. And how many years has Planet Zoo been out? They're very scary, and I never thought that I would have the patience or you know, the creativity to use them. And so I really am trying again, I've said it before, I'll say it again, to step outside my comfort zone and do some things that I might not. So in addition to this one here, which is not on the workshop as of yet, but I did make 2 other versions of signs, which are not Barnyard themed at all, but they are already up on the workshop. So if you don't follow me already, I'm terrible at uploading things that I build to the workshop, but I'm trying to get better. So I have uploaded a couple things there in the past few weeks or so. Oh, look at me making like a graph. A mountain? I don't know what that's supposed to be. Information. It's something cool on this sign. I'm not quite sure what I intended for that to be, but look at it. It's made out of font pieces, and I did it myself. So, you know, be proud of me. Yay! Anyway, I've uploaded some things onto the workshop, and if you want to use them, I would be happy for you to do so. If you want to take this sign and make it so much better, please do, and remember to tag me, because I would love to see what you turn it into. But I am really proud of this little sign and how it came out. For as simple as it is, this is a big thing for me, so I am very proud of it. Other than this little sign, we are going to put down some like hay bales and a couple wagon wheels and like a milk carton, you know, just some staging kind of decorative stuff that would be in this kind of area. Because as you're walking through, you know, it would be the animals that you're looking at, but also be, you know, educational and decorative and themed and all that kind of stuff. Inside this barn area would be one of the places that would be a little bit higher themed than maybe some other places around the park. And I just wanted to be able to use some of these barnyard items that we got. So, you know, I put a little goat on the wall, put a little sheep over there, a chicken, you know, using all these signs that I don't normally use. And I'm happy with the way that it turned out. So we're getting there. This video is a little bit longer than I really wanted it to be, which is why I cut out so much. Again, I had I think it's over 5 hours worth of footage. So the slow build for this one probably will be sped up at least 2 times its speed, if not 3 times its speed, because otherwise it would be a 5-hour video, and I'm not uploading a 5-hour video onto my second channel. That would take way too long, and I don't have the patience for that. Nor do I think anybody wants to watch a 5-hour video, so it'll be like a 2-hour video or so for you to put on for studying and things like that. Those signs that I just grabbed, I completely forget who they're by. I've used them before. Wonderful creator, not my creation. They are on the workshop, and I do use them in a lot of my different builds because they're really cool, just like blank signs. They kind of fit in with a lot of different themes, a lot of different areas, and I really do like how easy they are to place down. Excuse me, and they do look pretty much perfect. Now, the patchwork that you're watching me do here, the monstrosity that is the ends of this main barn building, we aren't going to pay attention to them too much. The one downside of using the custom roof kind of dimensions and slopes and stuff that I did was that there isn't really a wall piece that matches that. And when you're using vertical boards like we are for the wall, whenever you tilt the pieces, it's very apparent that it's not one continuous line up to the top. So I did the best I could, and as you kind of saw on both ends, I kind of did as good as I could do hiding the kind of sloped pieces or the kind of diagonal pieces, but they're not perfect by any means, but I didn't want to leave them open, obviously, or unfinished. So I did my very best to make it as minimal as possible to kind of finish that up. But it does look, if you look too close, just slightly janky. So we aren't going to pay attention too much to that. So just don't look at it. Anyway, moving on to the outside here, I did have to do a little bit of cover-up work because this is actually where the gate is into the goat exhibit. And so we've got that little platform that sticks out from the actual door where the keepers go in and out from. So I'm using the little pallet pieces, and my idea behind this is just to make like a little step up. Like this is where kids would probably be able to come over to the window. Oh yeah, a keeper got stuck on the roof. I'm not quite sure what happens there, but it happens almost every time a keeper goes in and out of the chicken enclosure. Again, we're gonna ignore that. But anyway, I envisioned it being like a little step up for kids to get up there and look through the window at the goats on the inside if they were walking by on the outside, just as a way to cover up the fence or the gate pad there. Moving on to a couple little details on the inside, and then we are just about done. I actually scoured the workshop during this build because I wanted to see if there was some hay feeders that would fit inside this barn for the enclosures that I'm building, and I end up just sticking with my own, to be honest. They're a little bit bigger than I wanted them to be. I end up using some of the pieces from, I think, like the Oceania pack to make like the fake hay. It looks a little bit like plastic, what are those car wash things? Like when you go through a drive-through car wash and it has like the plastic that hits your car over and over again. That's kind of what our hay looks like because of the piece that I chose. But again, we're gonna use our imagination and we're gonna pretend that this is actually hay that we're feeding our animals. I do put some hay feeders from the workshop. You can see me here pulling out a couple different blueprint items. Again, just trying to utilize some things that I would not normally use. I don't really go on the workshop all that often, but I should because there are some wonderful creators out there. So I do put some kind of hay feeders outside that were not created by me. They are from the workshop, but on the inside, I do end up sticking with my own little hay feeder. It's not perfect, but it kind of gets the job done. The goat one is far too big. I wish I could have made it smaller, but with the Planet Zoo pieces that we have at our disposal, it wasn't possible, at least in the time frame that I had. I'm sure that I could go scrolling and scrolling and scrolling and maybe use like 4 times as many pieces to get it to be just that much smaller, but I really didn't feel like it was necessary. I felt like that was a case of good enough, and we were going to settle with that. This is me on the inside, just doing a little bit of cover-up work, trying to cover up some of the like rough edges, loose ends that I was creating when I was trying to do the outside of this building, putting the fences in and stuff like that, or the gates in, and it was peeking through the wall. So just, again, trying to make it look as kind of polished and finished as possible. Another reason why I decided to do the roof on the interior of the barn the way I did is because, again, this was already a really long build, like 5 hours or something like that, and I needed to get it kind of finished, and I really didn't have it in me to create like a really cool pitched roof with rafters and beams and things like that, like you might see in an actual barn. That's a very typical thing, and it's very, very pretty, and I wish I did have the patience or the skill to do it, but flat roofing it on the inside and throwing some beams around the perimeter like I did was another good enough situation. I'm going through each enclosure and putting a few little buckets. These would likely be water buckets. I almost never use the water troughs that are actually available in game, like the water spigot and things like that. I don't necessarily like how it looks all that much. It's very big and it doesn't kind of fit in most cases. And for barn animals, to be honest, buckets of water is a very typical and common thing, how they would get their water. It would be something where the keepers go in every day and you just dump it out on the ground, you clean and scrub that bucket, and then you fill it back up with hose water. In the times that I was working with the livestock that I've worked with in the past, that's exactly what we did. I mean, sometimes we had like bigger tub water dishes and they weren't just like single 5-gallon buckets like this, or 3-gallon buckets. Those are probably smaller than 5-gallon buckets. But anyway, they were just buckets and you just hand filled them and cleaned them, and that's what they had. So that's kind of what I put in each of the exhibits, just to kind of mimic that, you know, the hint at realism, right? We're kind of going for realism adjacent. And after that, we're just adding some more education. I think I add another little sign on the other side and I put a bee on it, as, you know, here, maybe this is the sunflowers or for bees or something like that. I don't, do bees even like sunflowers? Anyway, that's a side note. We're just putting on some few additional details. I'm fixing up the path a little bit, you know, putting a couple more grass pieces everywhere. I think I mentioned in the very beginning of the video, I'm not putting 100% done stamp on this build. I likely will kind of work on it maybe in the next episode, maybe 2 episodes from now. It probably won't be an entire another episode working on this, because it is just a couple little like details here and there that I think it's missing. But I want to try to expand and not limit myself to starting and finishing exactly one build every episode. This is a project and it's an ongoing thing, and I want to be able to go back to different parts of the build and improve upon them if I have a new idea or new pieces come out or something like that. So for the most part, this episode and what we get done is pretty much done. We're going to jump into some cinematics or glamour shots, whatever you want to call them. If you've made it this far in the video, you've got to be enjoying it, right? So why don't you leave a like and hit the subscribe button? All that really does help me out, and I greatly do appreciate it. It really helps more than you know with that old YouTube algorithm, what we're all talking about and what we're striving to get on top of. So I appreciate you being here. If you want to support just a little bit more, I do have memberships available starting at 99 cents a month, where you get access to some exclusive videos and content, as well as just some other cool little perks. You can check that out on the channel with the link down below. If you're interested again in those real-time builds where we slow it down and you want to see exactly what I do, the Unwind channel link is down below in the description. We already have almost 150 subscribers over there, which is amazing considering it only started just a little bit ago. We're also doing a Stardew Valley playthrough over there if you're interested in a no commentary playthrough of that for relaxing and studying and whatever it may be. You can find that content over there. So enjoy the last couple little shots here, and I will talk at you in the next video. Bye!